Before we begin our new Gemara, we need to become familiar with the pasuk in Devarim, Perek Chav Hey, pasuk Yud Aleph, which talks about two men who are fighting, and the wife of one of the men comes to save her husband. How does she do that? She puts out her hand and she takes hold of the other person's private parts. V'shalcha yada, she puts out her hand, v'chazika mivusiv, and she takes hold of the man's privates. The pasuk could have said v'shalcha yada, she put out her hand, mivusiv, to the man's privates. What does it have to say v'chazika? So we're going to see what we learn from this extra word chazika, that when you're obligated for boshet, for shame, all is needed is the intention to harm. And that's what chazika teaches us. Her intention wasn't necessarily to embarrass, but as long as a person's intention is to harm, and through the course of that, she embarrasses the person, or a person is embarrassed, you're chayiv for boshet. We continue on a Gemara in Daf Chav Zayin, Amud Aleph, and Masechta Bava Kama, the second parak, Ketzah Haregel. And we know earlier that in order for a person to be chayiv in the Hey Devarim, Nezek, Ripoy, Sheves, Poshes, and so on, it has to be either Karav B'mezid or B'mezid. If it's a case of Shogeg, you're pata from the Daled Devarim, and you only have to pay for Nezek. Now, Boshes is a little bit different. And we're going to see that boshes, embarrassing and humiliating somebody, paying for that is more of like a knas. It's a fine. And therefore, it's not so much compensation, but it's almost like a little bit of a punishment. And we're going to see how this plays out in our case. So we look at the Gemara. The Gemara says, Amar Rabba says, Nafal mirosh hagag, baruch she'eni mitsuya. A person falls from a roof from a wind that is not normal in that area, meaning it's not kind of a wind that he would expect, and it caused him to fall from the roof. The hizik, and it caused damage to someone. Ubayesh, and he embarrassed the person. Chayav al hanezek, he's chayav for the damages he caused the person. Upater b'dalad devarim, and he's pater for the dalad devarim, sheves, boshes, ripoy, etc., and sar. Why? Because it's b'shogeg. And you're only chayiv for those dalad devarim when it's kar b'mezid or b'mezid, on purpose or close to purpose. Now, let's change the case a little. Baruch mitsuya. It was an expected wind, and the guy was on top of the roof, and he fell. V'hizik, and he damaged someone. Ubayesh, and he embarrassed the person. Chayiv b'dalad devarim. He's chayiv for the four. He's obligated for the four compensations. Upata ala boshes, but he is exempt for embarrassment. Why? Because here it's a case of karav b'mezid. He should have known better. It was an expected type of wind. He knows that on the roof it's very, very windy up there, and he should have taken precautions, and he didn't take precautions. So that's karav b'mezid. He didn't take the proper precautions. That's karav b'mezid, and he's chayiv for dalad devarim. But boshes, he's not chayiv. But if nahapech, if the person turns in the middle of the air and he wants to break his fall on this person, chayav af al haboshet. Then he's chayav for boshet. Why? Because he had the intention of falling on that person. He knew he was going to hurt the person. And we learned earlier from that pasuk, the hechazika, that if he has intention to hurt the person, even though the intention was not to embarrass him, he's chayav for boshet. That ringing that you heard in the background is a red alert. Today is July 23rd, 2014, when I'm making this recording. And unfortunately, Israel's still under the threat of missiles from Gaza. So we hope that the learning that we do today and every day should act as a schut, a merit for the Jewish people who live in Eretz Yisrael and for Jews around the world. We'll continue our Gemara. And now the Gemara is going to bring a proof from the pasuk that we learned earlier, that when a person plans on hurting somebody, and even though their intention is not to embarrass them, they're still chayiv for boshet. They get fined with boshet. Titanya mishmai mimashmai. We learned in the Braita, Shinama, the pasuk says v'shalcha yada, that she put forth her hand. The pasuk says she put forth her hand. Any yudea shechazika don't we know that she's going to take hold of something? If she's putting on her hand, it's obviously that she's going to take hold of something. So why did the Torah have to use the word chazika? Ma tamad loma chazika. Why did the Torah have to say chazika? Lama lach, to teach us shekevan sheneschavein lahazik, that when she has intention to do damage to someone, afal pi, even though shalom neschavein lebayesh, even though she doesn't have neschavein, she doesn't have intention to embarrass the person, she's still chayev for boshet. And that teaches us that when a person so a guy's falling off the roof and he turns because he wants the guy on the street to break his fall, even though he doesn't want to embarrass the guy, and of course he lands on top of the guy, he breaks his fall, but the person's also embarrassed. He's chayev not only for the damages, but he's also chayev for a boshet.